Story number 1. In the middle of nowhere in northern Minnesota, there are many small lakes surrounded by thick, dense forests and nothing else. There are no roads leading to them. You must hike several miles through the woods to reach them. There are no houses or buildings for miles and miles around them, just trees, more trees, and even more trees. It's truly beautiful up there. It's one of my favorite places on earth. I had been planning this trip for months, and had finally gotten all my gear together for a long backpacking trip in the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness with some good friends of mine. We were planning on spending a week in the wilderness, going from lake to lake, fishing, swimming, relaxing, and just enjoying the great outdoors. On the day we were supposed to leave, I woke up early, got everything packed up, and met my friends at the designated spot. We signed in and started our hike into the wilderness. We hiked all day and made camp near a lake. Everything was going well. The next morning, we got up early, made breakfast, broke camp, and continued on to the next lake. As we were walking along the lake, we saw our first portage sign. A portage is when you have to carry your canoe over land to another body of water, because there's no other way to get there. This portage was roughly 200 yards or about 185 meters. I looked at my friends, and they looked back at me. We all shrugged and got to work. We carried our canoes and gear to the end of the portage, put the canoes in the water, and started across the lake. About halfway across the lake, we heard what sounded like screams in the forest. Big guttural screams. Obviously, we were freaked out, sitting in the middle of a lake with no one around for miles and miles. Then we started hearing what sounded like hail for about 10 minutes, followed by heavy footsteps near our camp. My friends and I just sat there looking at each other in disbelief. We didn't know what to do. Should we get out of the lake, go back to shore, grab our stuff and run? We decided it would be best if we went back to shore to grab our stuff and get out of there. As we approached the shore, we could hear what sounded like someone or something thrashing around in the bushes. My friends and I quickly grabbed our stuff and started running for the hills. We ran as fast as we could, tripping over rocks, branches, and roots. We didn't care. We just kept running. We ran until we couldn't hear whatever was making those noises anymore. We stopped, caught our breath, and made a plan. We decided we weren't staying near that lake anymore, and we started to hike out. It was at that point we noticed that it was getting dark, and we had seen another couple of people since we had arrived. We didn't want to be caught in the dark in the middle of the woods with no light, so we picked up our pace. As we were walking, we started hearing what sounded like whispers in the forest. At first, it sounded like they were coming from behind us, but then it sounded like they were coming from all around us. My friends and I started to panic. We were running again, pushing through the thick underbrush, trying to find the trail. Then we saw it, a clearing with a fire pit and a tent. We ran to the clearing and collapsed in exhaustion. Relief washed over us. We were safe. But that feeling quickly turned to terror when we saw what was inside the tent. When we had arrived at the lake, we had seen signs of other people. A tent, a fire pit, and a picnic table. But when we ran away from the lake in terror, we hadn't noticed that we had come back to the same spot. The clearing, the fire pit, the tent, it was all the same. But what was inside the tent wasn't. Inside the tent was a man and woman who were laying on their backs, naked except for the shoes on their feet. They were both pale and had strange markings painted on their bodies. My friends and I screamed and ran as fast as we could. We ran until we came across a ranger station. When we told the rangers what had happened, they looked at us like we were crazy. They tried to calm us down and tell us that what we had seen wasn't real, that it must have been some sort of hallucination brought on by the exhaustion and the stress of the situation. But we knew what we had seen. The rangers called the police, and we gave them a full account of what had happened. They took our information and said that they would look into it, but we knew that they didn't believe us. As the days passed, we heard nothing from the police. We were beginning to think that we had imagined the whole thing when we got a call from the police. They told us that they had found the bodies of the man and woman in the tent, and that they had been missing for several weeks. They had apparently drowned in the lake, and their bodies had floated to the shore and washed up in the tent. We felt awful. We should have known that something was wrong when we saw the signs of a recent campfire and a tent at a lake in the middle of nowhere. But we had been so focused on getting to the lake that we hadn't paid attention. We should have known that something was wrong when we heard the screams in the forest, but we had been so scared that we had just run away. We should have known that something was wrong when we heard the whispers in the forest, but we had been so panicked that we had just kept running. To this day, I still don't understand how we managed to find the same clearing after running away in terror. I still can't believe that we actually thought that we were safe when we got there. I'll never forget the look on the rangers' faces when we told them what we had seen. I'll never forget the way that the man and woman's bodies looked. I'll never forget the whispers in the forest. I'll never forget the screams in the forest. I'll never forget the fear that we felt. It's been almost 10 years since that happened, but I still get nightmares about it. I haven't been back to that area since, and I don't plan on going back anytime soon.
Story number 2. I was hiking by myself on a trail in the Beartooth Wilderness in the early 2000s. I had not yet developed a habit of bringing a GPS device or even a map with me. I was pretty young and invincible and figured I couldn't get lost. Well, that day, I guess I did get lost. I knew that I was in trouble when I realized that I had been walking for hours and had seen no one. I started to panic a little and began to run down the trail, trying to get out of the woods before dark. I remember thinking that if I could just get out of the woods, I'd be okay. I was wrong. When I finally emerged from the trees onto the road, it was dark and I was alone. The sun had set hours ago and the sky was filled with stars. That's when I heard it. There was a noise in the forest behind me and it was coming closer. I began to run faster, praying that whatever it was would pass me by. That's when I saw it. Standing in front of me was a creature unlike anything I have ever seen before. It was tall and thin and had long, sharp claws. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, and it was staring directly at me. I froze in fear as it took a step towards me. Then it spoke. Its voice was a raspy whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It said, "You should have stayed in the woods." I screamed and ran as fast as I could, not stopping until I was safely in my car. When I turned around to look at the woods, I could see the creature standing at the edge of the trees. It was watching me. I could feel its eyes burning into my skin. I slammed the car door and locked it, then floored it out of there. I never went back to that trail. I've heard other hikers talking about it, and none of them have ever seen anything strange there. I know what some people might say. Maybe it was a bear or a mountain lion. But I know what I saw that day, and it wasn't any animal I've ever seen before. Whatever it was, it wanted me dead. And I'm pretty sure that if I hadn't gotten away, it would have killed me.
Story number 3. I was hiking with my boyfriend at the time, and we were fairly deep into the forest on the Appalachian Trail. The trail here is very rocky and root-bound, and the trees are very close together in some sections. We hadn't seen anyone for hours and hours, and it was starting to get late in the day. All of a sudden, my boyfriend stopped in his tracks. He had this weird look on his face. He was listening intently to something. I asked him what was wrong, and he said he didn't know. He just thought he heard someone or something in the woods. I laughed it off and we continued on our way. About 5 minutes later, it happened again. He stopped dead in his tracks and started listening intently to the woods. Again, I asked him what was wrong and he told me he had heard voices in the woods. I told him that it was probably just some kids playing around and we continued on our way. My boyfriend and I finally made it to our campsite late that evening. We were exhausted and just wanted to set up camp and go to sleep. But when we turned on our headlamp, we noticed that the trees around us had been marked with strange symbols. Some of the markings were strange geometric shapes and others were what looked like human faces. My boyfriend and I were freaked out at this point, but we set up camp and tried to go to sleep. That's when the nightmares began. I remember lying in my hammock staring at the trees around me, trying to convince myself that everything was fine. But then I started seeing things in the shadows cast by the trees. I saw the same geometric shapes that had been carved into the trees during the day. I also saw faces peering at me from the darkness. I tried to tell my boyfriend what I was seeing, but he didn't seem to see anything. I don't know if he was trying to protect me or what, but he just told me to go to sleep and that everything was fine. But I couldn't sleep. I spent the entire night lying in my hammock, watching the shadows dance in front of me. I was absolutely terrified. As the first rays of sunlight began to creep through the trees, I unzipped my hammock and climbed out. To my horror, I saw that the forest around me had transformed into a scene from a horror movie. All around me, I saw the same strange symbols and faces that I had seen in my hammock, but now they were even more vivid. It was like they had grown in size during the night. I screamed and ran to my boyfriend's hammock. He had disappeared during the night. I don't know where he went, but I never saw him again. To this day, I still don't know what happened to my boyfriend. Did he get scared and run away in the middle of the night? Was he taken by whatever was living in those woods? I'll never know. After that, I noped out of there and I never went back. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a new story.